presentation. Our first presenter is going to be Marcella Camblor, who is principal with Marcella Camblor and Associates, and Marcella has previously been a planner with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council before entering private practice. Our second panelist is going to be Erin Deedy, who is an attorney who focuses on climate change related issues and environmental law. And then third and finally is Gary Ritter, who, in addition to being a councilman with the city of Okeechobee, is the Assistant Director of Governmental and Community Affairs for the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. And the topic of this panel is going to be dealing with change. And we're going to come at it from several different aspects, from Marcella addressing, I think, in what is in large part an answer to Commissioner Meyer's question of how do we do public participation with projects that may be changing our conception of what is good growth, to Erin discussing climate change, and to Gary talking about the future of agriculture in Markham County. So with that, Marcella.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So it's hard to talk about community outreach and public outreach to a group like Thousand Friends, where all you do is outreach. I don't know that I am going to teach any of you anything, but I can talk a little bit about my experience in really dedicating my entire professional life to doing public outreach, initially for the public sector, and now on the private side, dividing my time between doing public outreach still for the public sector or for private projects. You know, before today, I had never looked up the word outreach. And I thought it was really important. There's a lot of definitions, but the fourth one struck me as one of the most, one of the closest ones to that describe what those of you that are dedicated to outreach are really doing, and the reason why you're really doing it is to provide, an attempt to provide services beyond conventional limits. It's an attempt to go out of your way, Commissioner, to really reach out to people, to really engage the community. When it's done authentically, when it's done for a good purpose, when it's really meant. As I mentioned, I have spent time doing outreach both for the public sector and for the private sector. And in my experience, when you have someone from a local government that wants to do public outreach, they want to seek input to define a vision, to do a change to zoning or land use. They need to identify needs, for example, in a neighborhood or in a certain area, and they want to know what residents want, what their hopes and concerns for the future are. They want to educate, whatever the issue may be, on water conservation or on sewers or whatever the issue of the day may be. Communicate intent of something that's going on. Seldom does public outreach come from the local government, local, I didn't say stage, but seldom does it come from the local government as a mandate, as something that planners are forced to do. I mean, if you're in this profession, it's because you love to the challenge of dealing with the public every single day, even if it seems like planners are in their office and never have to deal with the public. That's not true. When the outreach comes from the private sector, for the most part, it's mandated. You submit an application and immediately you see there that you have to communicate your intent to people within 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 2,500 feet. Usually somebody in staff recommends, well, why don't you go talk to the neighbors to make sure that they come and support or come and don't oppose. It's also done by groups that want to support or oppose change. And it's also, and more seldomly done, because private sector investors and developers want to seek input. But notice the disparity here. Usually the public's outreach, the least used reason is because it's a mandate. Where in the private sector, it's usually the first reason for doing it. And again, over the years, one of the things that I have learned is that in order to do valuable outreach, you always have to go beyond the conventional limit, beyond just, sending a few emails or sending out a few flyers. That each outreach process needs to be tailored to a specific need. It's not always the same formula that works. It's never fast, and it's absolutely never, ever easy. So for the past 20 years, the conventional approach really was especially when the public sector was trying to do an outreach process, there was an article in the paper hidden somewhere. I'm not going to show you, I'm sure you found it by now, and if you didn't, well, that's what happens to most people every day when this is the type of ad that you receive about a meeting. If you're lucky and you're within a certain area of where the project is happening, you get a little flyer or a door hanger. And then you reach the meeting, and there's a slick planner there with a big board where you're going to write, or he's going to write your ideas, or she, and there's a lot of jargon that is used. And if you're lucky, you get a dot, right? To put your dot, extra spot to say that you like this or you don't like it. Again, we've done this, I've done it to many of you. And then you get to sit around a table many times, and we tell you, draw your ideas, put them on paper, otherwise they will not be immortalized. Most of the time, this is the number of people that attend a meeting. They're taking copious notes because on day one, they're ready to fight whatever it is that you're trying to get them to work with you on. And sometimes you also get to hear your peers talk about their ideas, and you have to be warned over and over again that no idea is a bad idea. I challenge you, right, to see a smiling face in any of these groups. And part of the problem is, again, people work really hard to get the community out there, and it's usually either the people that are very upset about something that show up, or the people that are already supporting that idea that show up. And then what you see at the end of that process is an article or something that says, we had a great attendance. More than 70 people showed up in a community of probably 50, 60, 70,000 people. So no wonder when the project comes in front of the commission, everybody says, well, I didn't know, I wasn't invited, we didn't agree. So one of the things we've learned over the years is, who do you reach out to, who attends these meetings, and how do you really get to affect change when you do outreach? The percentages may be a little off, but in the top of this pyramid, this essentially represents the entire community. About 7% of the community is a group of people that don't need to go to public meetings. You can call them, you can talk to them, they haven't made up their mind, but they'll understand whatever it is that you're talking about, very quickly make up their mind one way or another, and move on. They won't come to fight you in meetings, and usually they'll probably support you or fight you, but it's not their life mission to go after every single event that you're putting up about a certain topic. There's about 8% at the bottom of this pyramid, groups that usually are for or against an issue, and their mind is set. You will never change what they're thinking, no matter how hard you try. What's interesting is this is the group that attends most of the meetings, on both sides, on the yes and the no, okay? And true outreach happens when you reach 80% or 85% of the population, the people that are running around taking their kids to soccer and ballet, the people that worked all day and all they want to do is go have a glass of wine at the end of the day, the people that are too busy or really didn't find that little article in the paper because they're not getting the paper, right? They're reading something else. So because we struggled with getting to that 80-85% of the population, we started using social media, right? Elements like Facebook or Twitter, and right after that, those became a little successful. SurveyMonkey came about, and Neighborly, and Neighborland, and Civic. So we got bombarded with ways to reach out to the community. And some of them are so complicated that, again, it becomes almost impossible to reach, because now you're trying to reach out and they have to learn a complete platform every time you're trying to ask them a question. About 6-7 years ago, we did a process. I'm not going to mention it because I know I'm going to upset a lot of people here, but it was a regional process across a 7-county area. But what was intriguing about that is how quickly, just by using technology, we reached out to over 1 million people. What was interesting about this process was that by using Facebook, in the first 4 months of the project, we were able to reach 78,000 people. By using Twitter, about 3,300. By using just a simple website, we reached over 1 million people very quickly. I mean, the website is still up. No one has uploaded it in 4 years, and it still gets hits. Under the same token, you know, in a region of 6 million people with about 30 events in that same period of time, we reached 1,800 people. So it's a combination of things. You know, it's not about reaching everybody. It's not about reaching every generation. It's not about the information that is given in these public meetings or the amount of education. It's not about you know, how funny you are when you are in front of a group of people. I think the process, true, authentic outreach, is about building trust. Is about talking to people about general big ideas, understanding that your intent is the same as theirs, and then allowing the community supporting you and allowing you to move forward to work on the details of whatever it is that the project may be. You know, when the private sector begins a process, it's harder. This is part of the reason they don't want to start public outreach many times. What did you say, Tim? Because I don't think I had your objective. I have greedy, heartless, corrupt, and nothing but deceitful, and every other nasty, and then you said low life. That's what you said. Yeah. So a developer goes in and tries to do outreach about a project. Actually, this is an image that we got when we were trying to do Coalmine Prairie about Mr. Knight Kiplinger. He had a big laugh about it. He's like, yeah, that certainly is a depiction of me with a cigar and the shiny striped suit. But anyways, so the perception that is that if anyone from the private sector is coming to ask for community input, there's an ulterior motive. They really don't want to know what you're doing. They just want you to not come to complain at the meeting. And so even before the first meeting, this is how the developer feels, that they're about to say, you know, next future side of the, and stop the, no matter what it is, whether it's good or bad. I'm just going to talk for 2 or 3 slides about how Knight Kiplinger changed that for Martin County. We talked about this a lot. He came to me and he said, Marcella, I want to, you know, I want to leave a legacy for Martin County. And I hear someone said I have to do a charrette. I said, well, just a charrette in Martin County is not going to do it. And so before we were done talking about things like these, he had published a full-page letter in every major newspaper locally, and in the region. And we had devised a program to reach the entire population, not just the 7% on the top, not just the 8%. We knew those people would come, we knew those people would hear. What we did is a couple of rounds. The first round was to go and tell people, we have an idea, we have a vision. What do you need? What are your hopes? What are your concerns? And we did that through announcing the process, through very quickly putting a website where people could communicate back and forth. One-on-one meetings and design sessions and direct mailers, social media, some of it, so long as the social media was not anonymous. News outlets, a lot of social events, live polling, and then with all that information, we went and created a plan. And then we did everything all over again and asked the community, is this what you told us? Did we hear you correctly? And anything that we had forgotten or new ideas, we incorporated into the plan before going to the local government. We reached out to 10,000 people just in Martin County, and that is very unusual. The only technology aside from the website that we used was the live polling when people were in the room. It was great because it was anonymous, but you were in the room. Some people didn't know if you could tell who was answering the question, I think. But it was good because this is a type of polling that allows people in a room to to know what others in the room are thinking. And we asked in that process questions about Martin County as a whole, greatest challenges. I think this is a summary of what all of the meetings that we did responded. So the health of our rivers, of course, at the time we were doing this, it was a big concern. Second, followed by jobs for young adults, and followed by managing our population growth. We asked questions about the project. Should Highland Prairie be developed as a compact, mixed-use, walkable village, much like the recommendations that we heard early this morning from Thousand Friends, compact development. 86% of those in attendance agreed. But we also put in questions that made people think. So this we asked in every meeting. We said, did your parents walk to school? And overwhelmingly, people said, yeah, my parents walked to school. And then we asked them if you walked to school. And, the number dropped to 58%. And when we asked them if their kids or grandkids walked to school, very quickly people realized that in one generation we have done something to our development pattern that has completely changed the way that we behave, the way that we lived, and has taken away our freedom, not just for our kids, but to answer your question, for our elderly too. That person in that big lot will not be able to drive one day. And that day, at a scale that is appropriate to our community, that person will need to be able to not walk to school, but walk to the store or walk to a restaurant, and probably won't be able to mow that big lawn anymore. So I got the red sign. I'm gonna go through these fairly quickly. I think what's important is, from everything I've heard today, is there will be a conversation about what happens next in Martin County. There has been for many years. Hopefully, Thousand Friends, with the support and of all the groups that are here today, this is the time that we talk about it for the last time and start really implementing the changes that will make us and guarantee us a sustainable future. How will it be authentic? This is great, but I think we're in the bottom 8% here. We have not reached to that middle 85% to ask them the question. How will it be simple? Just today we saw, I could tell from the back of the room that the maps that Thousand Friends in the County did were different. Most people, when you go to the 85%, are not going to notice that. Quick example, our team worked in El Paso, Texas. They had to decide how they were going to grow, and we said, are you growing out? Are you growing in? Simple examples. How are we going to preserve farmland? And so a lot of people think that low density preserves farmland. So you show them, is this or this? How do you preserve it? So it's not just about talking, it's about making it so that when you're out there with that 85% of the population, they understand what you're talking about. We talked a lot about water and compactness. Okay, so we need to be able to show them that, yeah, we can make it more compact, but why is it important? Okay, everybody's going to argue that, yes, if you leave everything green and we forget about humans, sure, we will have less runoff. But it has to be very well and factually informed that we can show that this first example, the sprawling example versus the compact example, runoff and sprawl is 0.33 inches versus a town, which is 0.23, so at least 40% less. The same thing with nitrogen and phosphorus. So yes, let's make it simple enough so that 85% can understand it, but factual enough so that they think it's not just pretty pictures. I'm done. Just a couple of final thoughts. Outreach is not easy. Those of us who do it wonder every day why we do it. It takes more than a small group of people wanting to do it. And you need to define what you want your goals to be to be before you get started. We need to understand that that 85% doesn't have time. But the fact that they don't have time doesn't mean they don't care. And it needs to be made worth their time. So if they're going to one of the meetings, they should be able to get something valuable out of it. Go to them. However it is that you do it, it takes time, it takes creativity, and it takes a lot of money to do that. You need to use the appropriate technology, but not all just technology. One thing that really worked with Highland Prairie is we engaged residents, and we made those residents responsible for engaging their own residents. So if they didn't come, It was not so much on us, it was a little bit on them too. Can't focus and emphasize enough on building trust. Build trust so that you got the big picture right. And then trust the people, trust a group of people to really deliver what that big vision is. And finally, want to have a plan implemented. Because if in 10 years we meet here again to try to do the same plan that we've been talking about for the last 20, you kind of keep making it harder and harder to reach that 85% of the community. So thank you. I'm sorry I was a little over, and I'll be happy to answer questions.